All right, well, this is the Pastor with No Answers, and as always, we are delivering today one heck of an episode. Now, I'm just saying that. Honestly, I have no idea how it's going to go. I personally am excited about it, but hey, what does that mean? That Joey Svensson is excited about an interview that he set up? So we will see, but I just met Brant, and I'm super intrigued about the bio that, I guess, was that your agent sent me?
I don't know. It may be the publisher or something. Do I have an agent?
There you go. But so you just wrote a book, or it is out already, correct?
Yeah, it came out recently.
Okay. So Blessed Are the Misfits. And before we get into that book, though, I'm just curious, like, how would you describe yourself? What's your work? What are you setting out to do? Are you an author full time? Are you a policeman? So give us a little snapshot of old Brant.
It would be cool to be a policeman, but I can't see very well.
Gotcha.
My eyes move back and forth. I have this thing called nystagmus.
Yeah.
And it's actually a neurological thing. But in order for me to see straight, I actually have to move my head back and forth. And
gotcha.
It doesn't make for good shooting.
Gotcha. So your head is compensating for your eyes?
Isn't that weird?
Gotcha.
And I've had that my whole life, so people think I'm saying no all the time.
Oh, shoot.
I know.
Hey, sir, can we give you this free gift certificate? I mean, yes. Dang, that sucks, man.
No, seriously, I go to Kohl's, and they're like, you don't want our Kohl's cash? Out of nowhere. I forget that I'm saying no.
Right.
But I've had to deal with that my whole life. I hate body language stuff. I don't pick up on it. I can't read it right. And I mentioned in the book, it's a pretty big part of my story that I'm on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
So I don't pick up on stuff either. And so my job actually isn't policeman. I'm mainly a radio host.
Gotcha.
And I've used my radio show to advocate primarily for a Christian ministry that I really like.
Right.
Which is called Cure International, and they heal kids with correctable disabilities around the world. And it's really profound work. So I take my radio and do that with it, and radio's awesome because I don't have to worry about my body language.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay, so if I'm talking to you, asking you a question, I see your head shaking no, I don't take offense like this is a bad question.
Please don't, but that happens to me all the time. So I feel bad.
You know what's crazy is we actually, Toby, my friend, did an interview for Bad Christian with a guy that had Tourette's. And so once in a while, Toby would actually remark on, hey, okay, you just shot the middle finger. Like, what was that about? And it is just so intriguing how his mind works. It's like a defense mechanism, I think he may have described it like, yeah, I'm saying stuff that I'm not sure if people believe it or not.
Huh.
So I'm just kind of giving a little you to people that may not believe, and I can't help it. I can't control it. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting.
It is just fascinating how the human brain works.
Yeah, it really is.
I love that. I think part of it, if you have an oddity, like I've got a couple layers, obviously I've already shared, you do view humanity differently because you always feel like you're on the outside, so you see things from a different angle, and I think that can be good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So is there a website to what you just said that you try to help out with?
Cure, yeah, you can go to cure.org.
Okay, cure.org.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah,
cool.
It's really remarkable, and I know it sounds like a big plug, but I put my life behind this. But
right,
if people associated Christianity with this,
right,
I would be really happy.
Yeah, awesome. So people need to check out cure.com. That's CURE, right?
Yeah, .org.
Yeah, cool. That's pretty awesome. No, we're all about plugging things here. You mentioned in one of your emails as far as being an introvert, and I'm curious, do you think that distinction is helpful? I personally do. When I'm really outgoing. I don't know a stranger. I've got decent people skills. I can go up to anyone and just start talking to them. So I always thought I was an extrovert. Because that's what an extrovert was. Extroverts, they're talkative. They're good with people. They can be the life of the party if they want to, or they can just be in the background. It's like, I always thought I was an extrovert. And then I started to realize, man, this is tiresome. Like, I am not being energized by this. I like to be in my room by myself. Like, if my wife is home, that's great, but I don't need to be talking to her. It's just like, and then when I realized that being an introvert, those people recharge by themselves or with a few people that they know very well, it was very freeing to me. But I hear sometimes some skeptics say that we make too much of it.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, we're talking about broad labels, right?
Right.
And so, obviously, humans are so complex, and there's no way it's going to evenly break down. So it's a broad, but labels can be helpful. In fact, all nouns are labels. I mean,
Yeah.
refrigerators, by and large, we know what you're talking about when you use the word refrigerator. Like, so when I talk about being an introvert, it's for those of us that don't naturally enjoy talking to strangers or starting up small talk, or we're just not that outgoing. But it's true that
Right.
everybody at some point recharges by themselves. I mean,
Yeah.
extroverts do too. In fact, they'll crash in a mighty way and then go, "See, I'm an introvert." Like, so we're talking about large, any kind of personality typing is, whether it's the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs or whatever. We're using broad labels. They can be largely helpful to describe ourselves to people, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's key. Because I have fallen into sometimes taking one of those deals and then just allowing that to label me, and fail to realize, oh yeah, it's a lot more complicated than that. But I think, in my defense, part of the reason for that is, very often I'll get results and I'll be reading it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is describing me. And so I buy in, because I'm like, gosh, how do they know all this stuff about how I think and how I process?
Well, I think it's understandable, because I do think, again, they're largely true. If I say this guy has a great sense of humor, well, that's a general statement, but it's largely true. Like, you might find that it describes you to a T. I think the key is not to let that define you, like you said. So be able to say, yeah, this is my natural bent, but I don't want to stay there.
Right.
Like, my natural bent, honestly, is selfishness.
Yeah.
But I don't want to stay there. I'm not going to use it as an excuse to go, well, that's just me. You got to like me. I'm a 5 on the Enneagram, and us 5s, or sometimes we just don't talk to people, and we're not, like, that's not good enough. So,
Exactly.
That can be my natural, disposition, but it doesn't have to be the way I'm going to be. I want to grow up.
Absolutely. So you wrote "Blessed Are the Misfits," and before we dig into some details of that, what do you think is a common misconception of spirituality in general?
Oh gosh. Well, where I'm going with this book too is that it has something to do with emotion. Like, to be spiritual means that you feel God's presence or something. And if you grow up, or you develop that idea that this is the nature of what it means to be spiritual, is I have these feelings, like, you're going to be in trouble. And it's not just Christian spirituality that gets defined that way. It's spirituality in general, like whether it's Oprah or whoever, any meme online on Facebook or on Twitter or something, so some picture of somebody on a beach with arms upraised, silhouetted against the morning sun, or they're standing on a cliff, like any spiritual things, like you're having this incredible moment. And I've found I don't have these moments.
Right.
In fact, I don't feel God around at all. Does that mean he's abandoned me? And I've grown up kind of thinking, what's the matter with me? Well, it turns out I'm very analytical. I'm not particularly emotive. I'm very skeptical. Other people are having these emotional reactions and I'm not. I don't think that invalidates God. And I don't think actually biblical understandings would invalidate it. He's not about emotion. He's about me being humble. I think that's what spirituality is to him. It's me humbling before him and submitting to him. So I think that's the biggest misconception.
All right, so let's take an atheist that not refuses. That's a common misconception of atheists, like they have their mind made up. I talked to a lot of atheists and they're like, I wish I could believe, I just don't. But someone asks you then, well, why do you even believe? Like, is Is this merely you reading a bunch of facts and buying into it, or what makes you someone that's so convinced that God is real?
Okay, well, that's a big question, and I'm going to answer it. I'm going to answer it as briefly as I
Hey,
can.
can you answer that in just 15 seconds? Because I've got some other questions I want to tackle.
Okay, so it will be quick because I don't want to be boring. But actually, not just I do spend a chapter in the book for that exact reason.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so skeptical. It's chased me back around to being a Christian. I grew up in a preacher's house, and it was completely hypocritical. And I unpack that in the book too to try to explain where I'm coming from. Divorces, scary stuff at home, all that stuff, and people saying, "Oh, your dad's such a great man of God. He's such a great because he's a good performer."
Right.
And so this is a fundamental church. Indiana and Illinois, small towns. We're moving around um, and I know what's really going on. And I don't want to go home. Like, I'm afraid when church is over, we'll go home, and I know what's going to happen. Like, I don't want to be a part of this. So I'm extremely skeptical.
Yeah.
However, I have found, just humbly speaking here, the alternatives don't work to me. What Jesus says about human nature, that none of us are good, seems to be true. And I'm really into history and trying to study human nature and culture. I don't think we're good.
Right.
I think if you hermetically sealed a bunch of people in a biodome, they would hit each other by 3 weeks. They'd start taking into warring factions. Like, this is how humans actually are.
This is so interesting. Now, do you think that Christians, with God's help, get better over time?
I think not all Christians. I mean, that's a little bit of a trap of a question because it's like people who define themselves as Christians or people who actually the Holy Spirit's working in.
And just for the record, what you're saying, I definitely resonate. And I think that it's a question that I often think about. Like, first of all, what you said as far as people pointing to someone and saying, yeah, that's a godly man or woman or whatever, and they're good in front of people. Like, can people not even realize that some people are good salesmen? They can
Totally.
I think in Tommy Boy they say, yeah, I could sell a ketchup popsicle to someone wearing white gloves or something like that. And it's like, don't you think that if there's salesmen that can convince you to buy a product, there's also salesmen that are really convincing about their church or their faith?
Well,
I mean,
and there will be that cast of people who will do that because there's prestige involved. If you set up a stage and spotlights, what do you think you're going to get? And this is what our culture has done with Christianity. I mean, there's money to be made, there's attention to be had, there's women to impress, there's spotlights to fill, there's stage. Some people just see a stage and they have to get on it, and they'll say whatever they have to do. So as long as there's power or prestige or something, you're going to attract people. They're going to misuse that. So, yeah, people should be more skeptical. This is part of why I struggle with church culture. But to get back to your question, Jesus makes a lot of sense to me. And also, if he's God, and he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, if that's what God is like, I really like that. I mean, just the character of Jesus. And when I talk to my friends who are atheists or agnostic or whatever, I do have that conversation like look at Jesus. Tell me what you don't like here, because I think he's pretty awesome. I mean, the way he flips the kingdom upside down, and the first are last and the last are first, and he brings religious people that are full of themselves to their knees, and he defends women. And what about this? If that's God, wouldn't that, even if you don't believe it, wouldn't that be the best news ever if that was God? So I don't think the alternatives work. I don't think they account for human nature and then have any sort of prescription for it. And Jesus himself is so compelling that I come back to him, and I think he's the only person in the world that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. So how does the church drop the ball with I mean, I'll just go ahead and put you in a category with folks like you. Like, how does the church drop the ball? Why do you feel like you don't have a place in common church cultures or circles?
Well, I'm going to talk specifically about the evangelical background I have, okay?
Yeah.
Because church is a big word, and a lot of times people go, "Oh, church is full of it," like speaking only about a certain kind of
I
Western
like that. I
church.
fall into that mistake all the time, so I
Yeah.
like that correction.
Well, and that's like me too. I get it where you're coming from. It's just that when you travel, you actually, to sum up the church as just white Western experience is not fair. And people do this all the time. It's not fair. This said, like with my background, the fact that it's so music oriented, for instance. I'm a musician. I play guitar, piano, I like to write songs, been in bands, blah, blah, blah. But music is not supposed to be central to our relationship with God, at least speaking biblically. It's not that big of a deal like in the New Testament church, but it's huge. Watching someone on stage deliver an oratory, like when people gathered in the New Testament, they gathered to build each other up. And Jesus even said specifically, don't do that. Don't make a level of people above you because you're all on one level and I'm your teacher. You're all classmates. That's what he says in Matthew 23. So
Get out of here. So we're all on the same level.
can you
Could
imagine
you
this?
believe that?
It's shocking but true.
Like,
So,
I'm a pastor of a church, and you're telling me I'm on the same level of all these people. It's like, of course!
I know.
Holy cow, of course!
I know, but it's just we love kings. We love people being on pedestals. We love the idea that somebody's living this pure life. They're pulling
Right.
it off. And we love doing it. But Jesus refused. So right off the bat, for somebody like me who's skeptical about big shots, I'm kind of like, well, why is... You don't know that guy. Why are we all acting like he's the fount of all wisdom? You haven't been in his kitchen. You don't know what his kids are like. You know, and I saw that up close and personal, so it's especially, for somebody like me, it's a difficulty. The other thing is, I wrote an article for CNN.com a couple years ago called Mr. Spock Goes to Church.
Yeah.
And it got thousands of comments from people going, oh my gosh, that's me too. And it was just about the spectacle of church. And for those of us that are kind of analytical and we're not getting goosebumps, just going, okay, yeah, you hit the third chorus after the minor bridge, and now you're going to modulate up, a full step, and everybody's going to raise their hands. There, you just did it. Mm-hmm. Does that mean God's here? Because they do that at the Journey concert, and everybody's hands go up.
Right.
So, as an analytical person, there are those of us left behind because we've defined in many people's minds that's what it means to worship God, and I don't think that even catches a millionth of it.
Don't you love this one? This is my favorite. Is you guys raise your hand and you cheer at football games for your favorite football team, and you can't do that for the Savior. That's two different things.
I always want to say that's because the football game's entertaining.
Totally. I mean, my gosh, to think that, and I mean, I understand where they're coming from because I understand the worship involved with football teams and stuff, but I mean, I'm just not going to have the same reaction of Jordy Nelson catching a touchdown pass as I am about a pastor saying something really cool. I mean, I'm just not gonna.
I mean, I will give my money and life to this mission. It doesn't mean I have to act like it's a football game.
Right, exactly.
And when you say that, it's just, you're so right. I've heard that so many times, and it's kind of like, why aren't you just getting as excited? You guys should be applauding right now. And I'm like, I've been on stage. I know what you're doing.
Right.
You feel better if we applaud.
Right, exactly.
Because you're on the stage. I've seen Christian bands do that where it's like, come on, give it up for God. I'm like, no, you like it when people are applauding. Like, don't insert God into here.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I'll admit, sometimes when I'm in front of people, it's almost like I feel a little uncomfortable. So I'm like, okay, my go-to, let's give God some glory.
Right, give it up for God, you guys.
But, I think you would appreciate this. A pastor told me one time, I thought it was so awesome. He said that, so basically what you're describing, Brant, is the iceberg principle. And that is you have people that are up on stage, and the part that you're seeing of them is really awesome. You can see it. You think to yourself, man, they have integrity. They're very smart. They're very wise. I bet you they're great in counseling situations. And yet you're only seeing what's above the water. Most of that person you can't even see. So how dare you write them off as a bad person or a good person based on what you're seeing. Like, aren't we smarter humans to know that there is a lot more than how someone's presenting themselves on stage? It's just crazy.
You know what? That's actually in my first book I wrote about, called Unoffendable. It's about self-righteousness.
Oh, you came up with the iceberg print. My bad.
No. Yeah, I pioneered this work in human. Only I have discovered this. No, but I actually talk about this seldom used verse. Nobody ever quotes it. It's in 1 Corinthians, and Paul says, you don't know someone else's motives. In fact, you don't even know your own. He said about himself, as Paul, he said, I don't even know my own motives, so I'm going to have to let God sort it out in the end. That's actually what it says in 1 Corinthians 4. Well, imagine what you just said. I don't know that that person's great. I don't know that he's evil either. I don't know their backstory. I don't know their motives. I don't know what's in their heart. I don't know what's going on neurologically. I don't know what's going on chemically. Why do I have to know? I don't have to take anybody's spiritual temperature. I can say, if people say, hey, Brant, is Bono a Christian? I don't know. I mean, he's a professing Christian. He seems like a cool guy. I don't know. But what? I don't know. Is Tim Tebow a good Christian? How would I know anything? I don't have to know.
Right.
I don't even know my own heart. And someone can put one over on you, and it's happened to me 5,000 times. Right. So why would I have to assess anybody? How about I just be humble and say, I don't know, and then just be like, hey, man, we're all in this together. God help us.
Right.
And that's so freeing.
Yeah, like how crazy is it? We see Tim Tebow give God glory on the field, and we just automatically assume that he is living a very godly life, and he probably is a great guy. But let's not forget the pastors that preach every Sunday, and they have a secret, corrupt life going on. But you want to say that Tim Tebow lives an awesome life because he kneels down on the field? It's like,
how about here's what I've always told people about Tim Tebow.
I sound like such a horrible person.
You're
right
a horrible,
now, too, and I don't.
Truly horrible person. What I've told people is like, here's the best thing you can do for somebody like Tim Tebow. Don't put him on a pedestal.
Right.
That's the most healthy. If you really like that guy, please don't do that. That messes people up. Right. Stop it. And quit saying, my pastor's such a great man of God.
Right.
Because you don't know. And he doesn't need that.
Exactly.
And conversely, if you look at somebody who's they're in prison and they've done something horrible, like for you to just say, I know that they are evil and I'm not, like, you don't know, man. If you were in their circumstances, we have no idea. Humans behave differently in different circumstances. And if you missed a few meals, you might turn into a Lord of the Flies guy in a second. Like, you don't know. So humility is such a wonderful thing to just go, I mean, I don't know. And God bless Tim Tebow, and God bless Tom Brady too, like all these guys, whatever.
Seriously. Yeah, I was, I have grown a lot in this area. I probably could have benefited from reading your book a long time ago. I remember an example of where I was at just even 2 or 3 years ago. We were gathered as a staff. So our church is spread all over the Southeast. We have a bunch of different campuses, but then one time a month we come together, so like 200 employees, and they had something. It was, great intentions for sure. I loved everybody that I was around. They're all brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. And but basically the point of our gathering was to teach people how to enter into God's presence. And it was it even felt like a step by step, like, hey, first we're gonna play music, and we just want you to be quiet before the Lord, and then we're gonna sing, and you got to sing these words out, like you got to speak this stuff out. And I just sat there, and the more we progressed and the further we went along, the emptier I felt, which made me feel bad about myself, because here I am, I'm a campus pastor at this church.
Well, wait a second, let me ask you a question. Like, why I'm really intrigued by that. Like, why do you feel empty the longer they're doing that?
Just because that's not how I connect with God. Now I'm not saying that I don't clap my hands. I'm not saying that I don't raise my hands. Like those sorts of things, me personally, I do. But that whole environment of, hey, we're all going to do this together, and I'm going to show you how I do it. It was just like, let's just play music and everybody seek God. Like, why does there have to be this? So, the full picture is I also struggle with depression, and so sometimes my mind is exaggerating and magnifying something worse than it really is. But I talked to a couple friends and my wife and all of them are at a way healthier place when it comes to, like, guilt and condemnation stuff. They're just like, dude, the last thing you need to feel is guilty that you didn't resonate with their man-made approaches of seeking God. Like, and that doesn't negate the authenticity of their seeking. It just means you don't have to seek God like they're seeking it. And so I seriously, in those environments, I feel completely at ease to say, yeah, I'm just not going to do it that way, but I'm totally down with seeking God with you. I'm totally fine with that.
I think that's really key, and it would be wonderful for them. Maybe it's a growth area for them to not worry about producing a feeling,
Right.
and not worry about conjuring it up, because you can, even without God, right? Like, that's what I mean. I can get chills at a U2 concert, for instance, and maybe that's God. I don't know what it is. I'm at a loss, but there's some people who don't resonate with that. And I know, like, looking at the Bible, do you see a precedent for all the emphasis on emotion? What I see is humility and obedience. That's God's idea of spirituality. Like, I actually serve people who can't do anything for me. That's his love language, apparently. Yeah. So that's really good news for those of us who tend to be more analytical, or all the people who go to a worship service and they're not feeling it and they're thinking, I'm missing out on something. Maybe God's abandoned me because I'm not feeling it. You're at least mature enough to know, and you've got mature people around you to be able to, talk to that. But I think a lot of people drift away from faith entirely because they go to some church camp when they're 13, 14, and they're kind of going, I don't know, man. Everybody's having this experience. I'm not.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Now, I mean, like, I grew up in Pentecostal churches, and I seriously, when I saw people run around the church with joy or jump up and down and just almost like lose control, they're so excited. And I'm not trying to sound crass, I seriously thought it must be like an orgasmic sort of experience. And so when I went forward for prayer to be baptized by the Holy Spirit, to this day, I will sometimes speak in tongues, but I'm not sure what. That's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
But at that time, when I felt like, yes, I'm connecting with God in this deeper language, I seriously was thinking, why doesn't this feel so good? Like, I really thought that it was just going to make me feel so good and like on cloud nine, because that's how people, that's what they did. If you're going to run around, and these are people that wear suits to church, and they don't normally do this sort of thing. So I'm just like, man, if that person's running around the church, that must feel super good. And who knows? Maybe for them, they had some deeper revelations of God that really did excite them. I'm not writing it off as inauthentic, but I was surprised that I didn't feel like a charge.
I totally get it. I write about this in chapter 1. About in college, I found some people like that.
Yeah.
And I had already been feeling like, I don't feel God, so something's wrong with me. I roomed with some guys from InterVarsity. They were all super outgoing dudes, and they were great guys. They're so funny, and they would go out onto the quad at the university and just talk to people about Jesus and stuff, and they did it very well, and it was genuine. But I was like, I just don't, I'm not feeling what you guys are feeling. What's the matter with me? So I found people like you're talking about. And they said, well, we're going to help you. And they took me into a church basement. And we sat in folding chairs, and then they were like, hey, can we pray for you? And so they put me in the middle. And here I'm this introverted, I'm a misfit, right? I'm a nerd. I'll be honest with you. I'm a total nerd. But I was sitting there, and they all started putting their hands on me, and they were praying in tongues. And they were saying stuff like, when they would speak English into my ear, they were like, and God, please break through his intellectual wall. Like, God, please break through Brant's spirit of darkness or something. Like get through, like you can bust through, get him out of his mind. He's in his mind. I'm like, yeah, you guys are out of your mind. And so
Making you feel bad for thinking and making you feel bad for leaning a little more on the analytical
how
side.
about for being my personality?
Right, right.
That's me, man. So what? And so they got done. They gave up. And it was like, well, God never broke through to him. And I was sitting there genuinely praying, God, please help me. Whatever it is these people have, kind of like you were saying, whatever these people have, please, like speak into my head, cut through. Let me start speaking in tongues or something. I don't know if I got to kickstart it. How does this work? And eventually it ended with, well, you're still all up in your head. And that's the end of the night.
Gosh.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And I will say too, and I'm not saying this out of obligation. I really do love our church. So the top level of leadership, it is very open handed. Like we have some guys that and women that are on executive sort of leadership, and they seriously will stand there during a worship service with their hands folded and just looking straight ahead. They're not clapping, they're not swaying, they don't even have their heads bowed. And I'm like, man, I'm so happy that I go to a church where that kind of stuff is just like, no, we're all different. So let me read this. It says, "Blessed are the Misfits" offers good news for believers who are introverts, spiritual strugglers, or just feel like they're missing something. Not everyone feels God's presence. Not everyone fits the idea of what it looks like to be a spiritual person. Not everyone is emotionally moved by worship music or praise easily. Many are often left wondering, what's the matter with me? Has God abandoned me? Is there even a God in the first place? So with that little snippet of your book, what do you believe about prayer? Most people would say it's an essential, it's a discipline, it's something that we should be doing. How have you processed what you obviously, I would assume, was taught about prayer, just like I was? Hey, that's something you do every day. You gotta get it in your system. You gotta make it a habit. How do you feel about prayer?
I feel like it's a real opportunity, but there's so much guilt that comes along with it because you're supposed to. I asked on Twitter a while back, you might get a kick out of this, but I asked people, like, hey, for those of you that pray, how quickly is it before your mind drifts? And it was like probably about 900 responses, and like 90% of them were within the first 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And just getting that out there, just having other people see that, I think is really helpful. Because I think it's very human. Our minds flit around, but we beat ourselves up for it, and then we stop praying because we're bad at it, and there's this guilt that comes along even with thinking about praying. So once I was like, actually looked at the Lord's Prayer. So Jesus is saying, here's how you should pray in public, okay? And his prayer is 25 seconds long.
Mm-hmm.
Like, thank you. Like, I actually thought that's really sweet of God. Because he knows us. He knows how we're wired. And I'm pretty, I don't, I have attention surplus disorder. I joke about it. Like, I can be really into something for hours and read or something. It's not that I have a particularly flitting mind, but man, my mind drifts very quickly. And here's Jesus given the archetype for the public prayer, and he keeps it less than 30 seconds. Like, that's really good news. That's really good news. And the other thing I've learned late in life is that God is patient with us. So whatever your mind is drifting to, fold that back into your prayer, because that's apparently what's really on your heart. That's really what.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And so now when my mind drifts, I'll be like, okay.
Right.
It's usually work or something I'm actually really stressed about or really worried about my kids or something like. So God, help me with help my son, because he's. So anyway, I see God's tenderness with it more now, and I actually pray more now when I've realized that it is an opportunity to talk to a dad who loves me.
Totally. I've heard. I love how you, flip the tables on how people typically teach stuff about prayer. I heard somebody say this as well. Like, people try to make you feel guilty when you fall asleep while you're praying, and the person that I heard this from, he responded. He's just like, what better thing to be doing when you
Exactly.
fall asleep. You're talking to God and then you're drifting off into your sleep. What else do you want to be doing before you go to sleep?
Think about it. Like when my girl was like 3, and
Yeah,
she's talking to me, and she drifts off and then falls asleep in my arms.
that's
I'm
beautiful.
not like, this is insulting.
Right.
What have you
Can
done?
you not stay awake for your dad for just 3 minutes?
How disrespectful! No, I'm thinking that's the best
Now,
thing.
what? Now, so you've kind of people that are listening right now, they kind of have a snapshot of you and how you are. Are you skeptical of extreme spirituality of people? Like, for example, I've met people that say, I went to the grocery store and I went down the cereal aisle and God just told me
Yeah.
I need to buy 3 boxes of Apple Jacks. So damn it, well, they wouldn't say damn it, but dadgummit, I bought the 3 boxes of Apple Jacks.
I like the
And
juxtaposition.
then I'm telling you, if God did not tell me to go straight to the meat section,
Yeah.
and I bought some steak, and then I had 15 things left on my shopping list, but God told me to go check out right then and there, so I did. And when I walked out to the parking lot, there was an old lady that needed to hear about Jesus, and God spoke clear. And it's like God is dictating every. So where I'm at with that is I have to admit some skepticism. Now, I don't want to say that that can't happen, and I do believe that God certainly can have that relationship with some people, but it just kind of seems like,
Okay.
why does God care if you get 3 boxes of Apple Jacks?
Okay. Yeah, I have thought about this, and I wrote about this. And there was a woman. She's at Berkeley. She's a professor at Berkeley, and she had Lerman, I think is her name. She had done a study about evangelicals and what they mean when they're talking about speaking with God.
Mm-hmm.
What are they talking when they hear God's voice? What do they mean? And the vast majority, people are saying, actually, okay, I didn't hear an audible voice. Okay, that's helpful for a lot of us. And I wanted to, I share that in the book because, again, for those of us who are like, man, I never hear his audible voice. What's the matter with me? I hear all these other people saying that. They may not mean actually audible voice, number one. The second thing is, what do I have a right to expect is really the question in my relationship with God. What does that look like? And people will say, well, God talks to people in the Bible. He talked to Noah. Yeah, 5 times in 950 years.
Right.
So is it reasonable for me to expect every day he's going to be talking to me about, should I get the Cinnamon Toast Crunch or should I get the, the Wavy O's? Well, maybe he talks to some people like that, but I don't think it's what we should expect. And I don't think we should think that God's abandoned us because he's not speaking out loud to us like that. I think it's...
And it also does not signify a deeper, higher level of spirituality.
Not at all.
Because you have some of these people who are like this, and they don't freaking know how to love people.
Yeah. And
so obviously they're not at a deeper place spiritually if they don't know how to love.
Right. And again, this is great news for those of us who aren't feeling all that stuff. Because you're right. Like, I can serve somebody. I may not feel like it, but if my neighbor's driving me crazy and I still serve him, like, I may not feel it, but the impression I get from the Bible is that God's really pleased by that. In fact, that's what love looks like. Like, even in a marriage, if your wife isn't feeling in love with Joey right now, or my wife isn't feeling in love with me, and she still serves me, that's real love, man. Because the emotion's not there. So I think, again, this is why
that's a good point.
That's why I keep thinking that this is good news, because it means we're not kicked out of the kingdom. God's pleased with us, and we can obey and be humble even if we're not feeling it. Because emotions, you can't trust them anyway, because they come and go, depending on whether you're hydrated, or you got enough sleep, or you exercised, or you had stress at work. Like, too many variables. That's not determining God's presence, whether I just had a Dasani or not. Like, it's too bad that we associate that stuff, because it's not fair. So
yeah, for sure. And it almost seems to, for me, and again, I don't mind speaking in generalities. I don't want to talk about someone specific and size them up, even though I do that in my head. But it seems like in general, isn't that a very consumer-minded approach to God, to think that he is always going to be telling us what we need to be doing step by step when there's kids that are being sex trafficked trafficked. It's just, and can God do that for everyone? Sure. I mean, I feel like he has that capacity, but it's like, why though? I don't know.
Well,
so what go ahead.
Well, I want to address the why a little bit. Maybe it's, and I don't know that it's a logical understanding necessarily, as much as it's certainly biblical. And I get into this in the second chapter, so really quick in the book. But bear with me on this. Is okay? Can I take 60 seconds to explain something?
No, do it.
So back in the day, when people got married in Jesus' day, the dad would pick the bride. So he would send his son over to their house, and he would bring a price that he was willing to pay, and he'd bring gifts for the family and the bride, prospective bride, and he'd bring wine in a glass, a chalice or whatever. And he'd go over and he'd say, "Here's the price I'm willing to pay." And then if they agreed to the price, he would turn to the woman and pour her a cup of wine and slide it over to her and say, "This is my contract with you. This is our covenant. If you want to drink this, you're accepting my covenant with you." And if she drinks from it, they're betrothed. And then he says, "I'm going to leave you with gifts. I'm going away. I'm leaving you with gifts." And he leaves them with their gifts to remember him by, because then he goes back to his dad's. It could be a year or a year and a half, and he's building on to his dad's home, the honeymoon suite. So here's the Last Supper, and we know this. Jesus is coming to his people, and he's saying, "Here's the price I'm willing to pay." And he's pouring a cup of wine. There's no way they missed out on what that meant in that culture. Everybody knows this is a proposal. And if you drink from the cup, this is me. This is our covenant. And then he says, "I'm going to leave you with gifts, but not like the world leaves. I'm going to leave you with my peace." And then he says, "I'm going to my Father's house where there are many rooms. I'm going to prepare a place for you." So all that to say, we're in this betrothal period where this bride would be a year and a half without seeing him. So you're betrothed, but the marriage isn't consummated. There's not much emotional reward in that. You're just getting ready for the big wedding feast.
Gosh, that's cool.
So we're not, there's going to be a great wedding, and I think we'll all be thrilled, and maybe then you and I will be running around the room.
Yeah.
But for some of us right now, can others please understand that we're looking through a glass dimly right now, and this is that year and a half where we're probably going, like the bride was probably thinking, "What's he really like again? Does he really love me? Is he really coming back?" That's the period we are in. And so for those of us who feel that deeply, and we still have this yearning for God, and people are like, "You should be totally satisfied." You know what? I'm not. Mm-hmm. I think I will be. But right now, it's not totally. Let's leave some space because it's going to get better.
Right.
So for those of us, that's where we are. And if somebody feels that, like Mother Teresa did for 50 years, where she didn't feel God's presence, but she kept doing that's faithfulness. It's knowing he's coming back for you. So that's where I am. And it's great to create space. If you're somebody who you feel like you're already at the wedding feast, awesome. Okay, the rest of us we're betrothed, man. And This isn't easy, but cut us some slack.
Totally.
So that's the allegory I try to use to explain where we are.
Yeah, I like that. Cut us some slack and go read some Lamentations and maybe see where we're coming from.
Right, and of course we're still yearning.
Right.
Of course, because it's not done yet. We're not in the kingdom yet,
Now, should Brant seek community?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, even if that's hard, even if that's out of your comfort zone, even if, you're tired, you don't feel like it, why is community still important? I agree with you.
I go down a list in the book, in the chapter. Because I anticipate that question because I've thought it so many times. It's such a good question. And I just bang, 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 bang. Here's 8 reasons why I have to. And it's stuff people don't normally think of, such as I need people to break through my self-justifying machine, because we all are justification machines. And we will change our beliefs to fit our behavior instead of the other way around. This is how humans are and have always been. So unless I've got people who actually know me and are allowed to speak into that, I will justify anything, even destroying my family. I'll justify it. And so we have to have people speak into that. I would say also, we've got to be a part of community too, just because we're supposed to use whatever gifts God's given us to be a blessing to other people.
Yeah.
And I can't do that on my own. It's impossible. I also can't do it in a typical church gathering where I'm just watching the backs of everybody's heads.
Right.
Like, so I have to be in an actual community for that to happen. I've got to have people to not break up with, like, that stick it out because we're family. And I tell a story about almost getting in a fist fight over ping pong night with my community. With some guys. It wasn't my fault. I don't know what happened, but
I'm sure it wasn't.
But it was about the.
Well, hey, did the guy say, "Hey, man, am I a good ping pong player?" And your head was shaking.
Yeah, probably. That's probably it. We were talking about we were playing doubles, and we were talking about the serve rules. And I guess I was sarcastic. And next thing I know, he's coming at me. He's one of the leaders of our group.
Yeah.
But it's like the funny thing is working through that because you don't. It's the easiest thing in the world to break up.
Right.
People break off relationships all the time, constantly. Breaking up is hard to do, is the song. No, it's not. Exactly. It's the natural state of things. It's entropy. That's what we tend to. But to say, I will stick with this person for Jesus' sake, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And so for them to put up with me to put up with them, is a beautiful thing. So I can't do, this is not a solitary sport as much as I'd like it to be. And as goofy as church culture is, this is not something I can practice on my own. In fact, it's not even coherent to live this way on my own.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, is there any validity in folks being uneasy about brothers or sisters who are in a period of doubting and figuring out? It's kind of like, yes, the door is open for you guys to come and learn, and we'll even serve you, but you can't have influence, in our flock. You can't teach kids. You can't, and maybe they're in a season where they shouldn't be, but does doubt and questions eliminate someone from being able to teach other people?
That's contextual, I think. Did you ever see the old Saturday Night Live when, Sam Kinison was on? Do you remember him? He was the comedian that would scream stuff.
Yeah.
Well, he did a thing where he was a kindergarten teacher, and people came in, some parents, and they're like, "What's the matter? What did our daughter do?" And he's like, "Your daughter's living in a fantasy world, man." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, here's a picture," and it's just crayon drawing of like the sun smiling and trees. He's like, "Come here." He takes him to the window. "Look at the sun. Is it smiling? Is this really the way it is?" And he's like, "Let me tell you the real world." He takes this big book about Vietnam. He's like, "Vietnam, seeing your friends get blown up in Foxville." Like, so when it comes to like teaching kids, why would you want to teach kids about Jesus if you don't believe it?
Right.
And you certainly, they're in a concrete stage of learning. So I wouldn't bring in abstraction into that. Now, if they're willing to not do that, that's cool. So I think it is, you see what I mean? It's kind of contextual. Mm-hmm. I'm not.
I think I'm with you. I think I'm with you on the kid part. I'm uneasy personally about adults or 18 plus or whatever not being able to have that role. And I think the big reason is that most people that are teaching others or leading groups are doubting stuff anyway. And the fact that we eliminate that from your like if you have that on your resume that you doubt and you're still trying to figure stuff out, oh well, you can't teach. It's like, okay, well, we just made a rule that basically says that only the spiritually mature are not doubting and are not asking questions.
I understand that. I think you can. I 99% agree with you. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'd also say it does get. I have been in churches where it got stupid.
Yeah.
Where it's just
absolutely.
Okay, we're all about social justice, and next thing I know, in Sunday school, well, he doesn't even believe in God, and he gets to teach.
Yeah.
Like, well, what?
Yeah.
Wait a second. That's like, I don't want my biology teacher saying I don't believe in the scientific method.
Right.
Like, it's not that I'm threatened by doubt. I love talking to people. I have my own doubts. Like, I can go there. Okay. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just to take it to the other extreme, I think there's a short list of things that like I need to be able to sign off on, and it's a pretty short list.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so give a pitch for Blessed Are the Misfits. Who should be buying this book and checking it out?
Everyone should buy multiple copies at full
There you go.
retail. It's just,
There you go.
I'm not saying you have to, but I do think God told me that you. No,
Yes.
well, it's for the people we've been talking about. Like if you know somebody who's like that, maybe they're analytical or logical, maybe they have Asperger's, for instance. They don't fit into church culture, but they're still open to talking about God. That's who it's for. Or you may find it may be really good news for you if you struggle in this area yourself to go, I'm part of a tribe and we're still in the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And so that's it really is. Blessed are these people, like happy in God's kingdom. He's so good. Happy are those who have doubts and are analytical and don't fit in and don't get goosebumps during the worship service. Like,
Yep.
Happy are you because you even get to be part of this.
There you go.
So
there you go. Well, this has definitely been one of the funner conversations I've had in a while. And part of that is because I have some very sad conversations with, and those are sad. So This has been awesome, man. I really appreciate it. And we'll include in the show notes and any websites that you want people to go to and where they can get the book and everything. But we sure appreciate your time and
Thanks,
giving
man.
us your insight.
Joey, awesome meeting you. I enjoyed it too. Thanks a lot.